My Lords, the Minister has rightly defended a reasonably good record of government funding in the field of mathematics, and I applaud that. But is he convinced that in biology, chemistry, physics and other scientific subjects, many of which now depend fundamentally on mathematics inherently in their teaching, that sufficient attention is being given to those other scientific subjects?
I will need to refer to the Department for Education for the details of how they support these other vitally important subjects in their teaching programmes, but I agree with the thrust of the Noble Lord's question.
Second oral question, Baroness Neville-Roll.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the Department for Transport is considering options for how best to regulate e-scooters and crack down on their illegal use. New measures being considered will be designed to create a much clearer, fit-for-purpose and fully enforceable regime for e-scooters and other micromobility devices. This will include robust technical standards and new rules for both private and rental e-scooters.
My Lords, I think e-scooters have become a menace, and I think the government is being too slow either to ban or, as we've heard, regulate them. They're dangerous in design, using up valuable rare metals in battery manufacture, and they cause growing numbers of accidents amongst riders, amongst pedestrians, the disabled, and from scooter-induced fines. And the defence of the present situation has focused on the relatively small number of regulated trial rentals and not the hundreds of thousands in private ownership with very limited legal use. Can my noble friend the Minister advise the House what early action she proposes to remedy this situation? I think we need to try harder.
Well, the policy is still under development, and I'm grateful to my noble friend for highlighting her concerns for our consideration as we develop the policy going forwards. It is very important that we develop a safe, a proportionate and a flexible regulatory regime. In order to do that, we do need the data from the various trials which are going ahead, from the Future of Transport Regulatory Call for Evidence, and indeed ongoing conversations with stakeholders and more research. So we are making progress. I want to reassure my noble friend, and I recognise there's more to be done.
Lords, would my noble friend agree that there's...
Lady explains a very complicated, confusing situation. Is she able to explain to the House where e-scooters can be legally used in England and where they cannot be used? And will she pass on that information to the police?
Yes, I can explain that. It is the case that it is illegal to use a private e-scooter on all public land, certainly illegal to use it on the pavement or on the road. There are trials which have been set up around the country to develop evidence for future regulatory reform, and within those trial areas it is allowable to ride an e-scooter on a road or in a cycle path. We're obviously working very closely with the police on enforcement, and for example the National Police Chiefs Council is developing a national strategy for tackling the illegal use of e-scooters. My officials are working very closely with them on that.
My Lords.
Thank you. My Lords, there is a growing problem of e-scooters being ridden in Northern Ireland illegally and erratically, where they are only permitted to be driven on private land. A Freedom of Information request from the Belfast Telegraph revealed that the PSNI does not hold statistics on the numbers of fines or cautions issued. However, there is a perception that few, if any, offenders have been prosecuted. Does the noble Baroness the Minister agree that addressing this potentially lethal threat to personal safety should be more of a priority for police forces across the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland?
The Noble Lord is most likely right that the PSNI does not hold data, and indeed it is the case that police forces in England do not currently hold data relating to offences by riders of e-scooters specifically, because they fall under the category of motor vehicles, and therefore that data is within that. At the moment, the Home Office has no current plans to introduce a requirement for forces to collect information, but as the Noble Lord has set out, it is absolutely key that local police forces develop good action plans for enforcement following the guidance that will be coming out of the National Police Chiefs Council.
My Lord, last year there were 931 casualties in e-scooter accidents. 200 of those were non-riders and there were 3 fatalities. Yet there's absolutely no reference in the new highway code to e-scooters. Does this make the government derelict in its duty to protect both riders and those who inadvertently cross their path? And does the noble lady, the Minister, realise that by tarrying so long on this, the government is not leading but lagging the rest of the world?
I'm not sure that I agree that the government is tarrying so long. It is really, really important that we get the correct balance between the enormous benefits that e-scooters can bring and safety on our roads. And the noble lady is right to highlight some very serious safety concerns that have arisen, and we are gathering the data, and we appreciate data from all sorts of different places which we know is coming into the department, which we can subsequently analyse. But as I have said previously, e-scooters are not currently allowed on the roads, except in trial areas, and it could be that it becomes impossible to get a good legislative framework together. So for the time being, within the trials, obviously the e-scooter riders must comply with the rules of the trials and must take part in any training offered.
My Lords, my Lords, my Lords, my Lords, my Lords, my Lords, this matter is now urgent. What deadline has the Minister set her department for producing a report? Because we cannot go on with uninsured riders, very often moving drugs and so on around, and otherwise just knocking down pedestrians. Can we have a deadline, please?
Yeah. My department is currently considering how to best capture and to publish the information that we are gathering from the trials, and we hope to make progress on potential new primary powers. I cannot give my noble friend a deadline, but suffice it to say at this stage we have a large team working on all of the different elements to enable us to bring forward a legislative framework.
My Lords, having witnessed the increased use of e-scooters in London recently, I'm irrevocably drawn to the conclusion that this is a catastrophe waiting to happen. I've witnessed almost every rule of the road being breached, from reckless and careless driving, from excessive speeding, jumping lights, riding on footpaths, use without lights. Could the noble lady, the Minister, advise the House of the number of e-scooter accidents and prosecutions in London which have taken place since being legalised, and why was the opportunity missed to offer advice and guidance in the redraft of the new Highway Code?
I might swerve the Highway Code question, because I think I've gone as far as I can in the answer to the noble Baroness Lady Randerson. But I would like to slightly push back on what the noble Lord is saying, because it is a little bit concerning. A number of people have bought these scooters, and we obviously want them, if in due course, to be able to ride them safely. We won't be able to do that for all e-scooters, or indeed for all riders. But it is clear to me that people do see them as an attractive alternative mode of transport. And so the key here is to legislate accordingly, and that is what we are very much focused on. The noble Lord asked about safety stats, and I can say that the Metropolitan Police for the year to June 2021 recorded 496 incidents of injury with e-scooters, that is versus 25,666 where it was any vehicle.
My Lords, it is.
Police enforcement of offences, but as my noble friend Lady Randerson mentioned earlier, it was Department of Transport statistics in the year to June 2021, which were collected from police forces, which show that there were nearly 900 accidents with 3 people killed and 253 seriously injured. So if her department can get accident statistics from the police, why can't they get statistics on enforcement and offences? Is it because her department is not encouraging the police to do any enforcement?
No, enforcement is going on and offences are being fined and penalties are being given out, but the reality is the Home Office doesn't collect the data by the specific vehicle type that is an e-scooter.
My Lords, there are estimated to be well over 1 million private scooters being purchased. Would my noble friend like to comment on the fiction that these are only being ridden on private land? Secondly, at point of sale, does she think that there's clarity and unambiguity when purchases are being made? E-scooters illegal except in trial areas or on private land, rather than the reality of the chaos and catastrophe they're causing up and down the country.
The department is acutely aware of the issue of the number of private e-scooters that are potentially being ridden on public land at this moment in time, which is why we are working as quickly as possible to develop a legislative framework which will be set out in primary legislation in order for them to be ridden legally. But we are also reassured that there is some consumer protection from the unfair trading regulations 2008, where traders must give sufficient information to consumers. They must not mislead. The ministers from my department have written to retailers many times, and the last written reminder of their obligations was in December 2021.
Third oral question, Lord McConnell of Glen Scorridale.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the Government will publish a new international development